The wizard, arguably the most iconic image that comes to mind when we think of the fantasy world. What would the world of fantasy be without a powerful wizard, full of wisdom and virtue, seeking to aid the weak and those of a simpler innocence to the complexities and inner workings of the universe? Or one privy to the knowledge of ancient secrets, of dark powers untapped to those who've not spent the years locked away in solitude, studying the deep hidden secrets of the past? And what is a wizard without a tower to lock himself within, high and secluded, undisturbed from the petty goings-on of the world outside? To some wizards this may be its purpose. Others, it is a simple escape from the trials of the world they work to shape and bring into good order. Hey everyone, welcome back again. This is Neil with Real Terrain Hobbies. This is the first video in a series where we'll be building an epic wizard tower, unlike anything you've ever seen before. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, that remains to be seen, but we'll be pushing for it to be really awesome. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So to start off our project, we're going to be building a menacing stone monolith for a base that will become the seat upon which our tower is to be perched. This is the foundation of the tower and as such a hugely important part of the overall look and feel we'll be trying to achieve. To start off the project, you can see I start out by cutting out my wood base, and then on top of that I'm building up the structure with some styrofoam. And I'm using my hot wire cutter for that. If you don't have one of those, just go ahead and use a knife. I haven't used a hot wire cutter. I'm using it with a respirator that I have. If you don't have a respirator, not a problem. Just put a fan on and open a window and get rid of those toxic fumes. Now for this project, we're going to be making many rock molds. What I'm using is the Woodland Scenics rock molds. I'm casting with those. I'm not sure if there's anybody else there that actually makes these things, but if there is, please let me know in the comments down below. But I'm using the Woodland Scenics, and you're going to be making a ton of these. So do up a whole bunch beforehand if you want, but as I'm building up with my styrofoam, I'm having these cast already, mixing my plaster of Paris and getting these ready. And one thing you want to make sure is that you wet them first with a spray bottle with soapy water, otherwise you're going to end up with little bubbles in the castings, and that's not something you want. The glue we're going to be using for this build again is PL Premium. Now this will have a nice, strong and secure bond. It does have a 24-hour curing period, but for this project that doesn't matter, and we don't need fast cure times for this phase of the build. So for my stairs, what I'm using are some slate pieces that I had left over from a project that I was doing outside in my backyard, a small little pathway. And now I'm assuming most of you won't have this on hand. So instead what you can do is lay some tin foil out on a counter, kind of crumple it up to give it kind of a jaggedy rock effect. And then you can pour some plaster of Paris on there, about 1/4 of an inch to around 1/4 of an inch or a centimeter thick. And then just break that up into pieces and you'll have the exact same effect as these stone pieces that I have here. So now we're ready to take our first batch of stone out of the molds. Now, before applying these rocks, I do a loose layout of how I think these will look. I kind of rearrange the different rocks to suit how I think they should look. So I would recommend doing that first instead of just slapping each rock on one at a time. You might end up with something that doesn't look quite as nice as you had thought it might. So first lay them out, dry, and then from there you can plaster them into place. Now, if you haven't already seen my video on water rapids, I use these same molds to produce that diorama, and that is a complete start to finish of the build, from casting the molds to applying them to the styrofoam base, painting, adding flocking, and getting it to a nice and perfect finish. So go ahead and click the video right above here if you want to take a look at that, and if you haven't seen that project yet, I would highly recommend it. Just be sure to wet the back end of the mold that you're going to be applying the plaster to. This way that plaster will adhere extremely well to the mold and it won't be kind of falling off, because that those dry molds just suck the water right out, the moisture out of the plaster, and it'll harden it before it has a time to adhere. Now, this is the adhesive I used for the pieces that are going to be on the vertical or even almost upside down to the ground. So I wanted something that'll stick instantaneously and not fall off before it's cured. This is the product I came up with. If you have any suggestions, let me know down below in the comments. I'm thinking maybe a hot glue gun could work, but I'm not so sure how that would work with plaster being so porous and kind of breakable and crumbly, as well as with styrofoam. But if you have something better, let me know down below. And you can see how well the Fast Grab PL Premium works here. You just apply it to your piece and you stick it on. As we continue on with these stairs here, it's important to keep in mind the shape and overall look we're going for. What we're trying to convey is something that is very treacherous, very perilous. Just picture a weathered and wearied adventurer who's traveled days and days, weeks, maybe months to come and seek the audience of this wizard. And this is the final stage. This climb up to the tower is a very dangerous, treacherous one. Maybe the steps and rocks are wet and slippery. They're very steep, and one false move and you're over the edge into the water, ground to a pulp by the waves pounding against the rocks. There's no railing or anything like that. So to do this, every now and then I'll have some steps that are very steep and very close together, but I do want steps that are wide enough for a 28mm figure to fit on, but always visioning in our mind how this could be treacherous, while at the same time functional for gaming. And this is a perfect example of where the Fast Grab PL Premium is excellent. Just apply the glue, push on your piece, and it's not going anywhere. The biggest thing to look out for when adding these rocks and the different layers is that in between the joints where they butt together, there's going to be plaster sticking out. So you're going to be wanting to smooth that out with your sculpting tools. This is going to be a lot of work to kind of get that. Sometimes you may accidentally lose a little bit of detail with some of the excess plaster kind of getting smeared over top of the rock detail. One way to avoid that is to make sure that the plaster and your rock face. The face itself isn't wet. If the face is wet, the plaster is really going to adhere and kind of absorb into, or the wet plaster will absorb into the rock face. So try to keep that dry, but at the same time you need to keep the back end of the rock wet so that that will absorb the plaster well and adhere to the overall structure. And making our way to the top on this last leg of the journey with our staircase, we are making this a little extra steep than the rest of it. This is the highest part, and I wanted to make it the most dangerous, and so we're going to have some good stretches of some very steep stones that are quite close together, but I still added about 2 or 3 places to add your mini for the way up. But yeah, I wanted to make this part particularly dangerous and perilous. And here at the very top of the stairs, I wanted a landing that could fit the whole party at the front entrance of the tower itself. So now that the stairway is complete and we've reached the top, it's just a matter of filling in the empty spaces with rock. Again, we're just kind of sorting through the different pieces, seeing what looks good, seeing what will add a bit of character, what will maybe put too much character in and make things look a little too cluttered and chaotic. But in the end, it's all up to you and what you think looks good. And as a final step, we're going to be attaching the structure to a board that is 24 by 18 inches or 61 by 46 centimeters. And this will be the baseboard for our future ocean.